A warm welcome and good day to everyone. So nice to see all of you, folks who are here in person, folks who are online. It's wonderful to see you. And so this is the Sunday Sound of Dhamma. And we are fortunate to have Miss Claudia Gutierrez there doing interpretation in Spanish for folks who want to hear that. Those are recorded also. And just a couple of brief announcements before we start with the program. So next Sunday, we'll be having brunch here. So folks who are in the area, if you would like to come and have a meal right after the Dharma talk, we'll be here. It's a bit of a potluck brunch. And just know that we have our new resident, Nino, the cat. And Nino's a very good boy. He likes people. But he's not on his hypoallergenic food yet because he has a bit of a cold. But eventually we'll try to do that so that it's easier on everybody. The very, very joyful precept ceremony is happening on November 24th. And yes, we have art virtual tours of the great Buddhist art from around the world, also beginning in December. So lots happening at the vihara. And I hope to see you all at various different events. So today, the Sunday program is as usual, and that means we'll have about a 10-minute guided meditation. And then I'll offer Dharma talk, and we'll have time for questions and comments and reflections at the end. And I think that's everything for now. So today I thought that so we're going to try a mindfulness of body practice, and it's about the four elements. And sometimes people feel like the four elements is a kind of conceptual practice, but if you really think about it, we have the earth, a sort of solid matter, water, and fire, or sort of heat, and air. Those are the four great elements. Oxygen in every cell of the body. Those four elements are present. So it's really more of a matter of what is our perception of the body. Do we sense the solidity or the fluidity or the heat or the spaciousness and airiness, lightness? So I like to begin with just a bit of movement, rocking the body and the head, just allowing that balanced and upright position to settle in. Releasing whatever tension you can let go of at this moment, and allowing the body, the muscles to relax and become wide and soft. And then moving the attention to the crown of the head. And beginning to scan down the body. Just noticing any sense of the earth element, the solidity, the firmness. You can feel it in your teeth. And moving down the body, down the right arm. Just aware of the earth element pervading the body. That natural stability. And arriving at the right hand. And moving to the left hand. Also pervaded by earth. And up the left arm. And across the shoulders. And beginning to move down the torso. Just noticing the firmness, the stability of the earth as this body. And down to the hips. And then moving the attention along the right leg. Aware of earth. Firmness. Stability. And eventually arriving at the right foot. Also pervaded by earth. And then a shift to the top of the left leg. And moving downward toward the foot. And finally arriving at the left foot, also pervaded by earth. Now moving at your own pace, moving back up through the body, and this time becoming aware of the fire element, the heat, the warmth of the body, every cell burning calories. Slowly moving up the body, attending to the fire element. Perhaps noticing the heartbeat. That's also fire element in the body. All the way to the crown of the head. Fire as this body. All right, so that brings us to the end of the meditation part of our program. And if you have any questions or comments about that, we can take them at the end. For now, I'm going to shift to the Dhamma talk, I'm going to chant the homage to the Buddha and the Triple Gem. If you know it, you're welcome to chant along. Folks online keeping their mics muted, please. Namo, excuse me. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So we're at the time of year when there is a lot of talk about food. This is a time of year when there is a lot of food traditions, a time for sharing food, a time for giving food, people connecting through their associations with food. And that can be really beautiful, that kind of generosity of heart is very important. Actually, the Buddha said that if you knew what I knew about what I know about the impacts, the karmic results of giving, you would never eat a meal without sharing it. You never eat a meal without sharing it. And why is that? Because he said, and one of the most important problems of human life is greed. Right? Greed, hatred, and delusion are said to be the three root problems of human life. And so giving food, which is a very important thing, right? Food which sustains our life, is an important way that we open up our hearts and we counter that tendency to hoard or to feel that somehow our needs are so important that we can't take care of someone else's need. So it's a beautiful, beautiful time for doing that, for sharing, and for this connection around culture. Yesterday I was at a workshop about immersive forms of teaching Japanese culture through art. And we were talking about food and the sort of plastic food samples that are very popular all around Japan. If you've ever been there, there's like these elaborate displays in the windows of the restaurants made out of very real looking plastic food. It's like a cultural thing there. But not that we were referring to those things as art in any way, although I'm sure it takes some skill. But for myself, I went to have arepas after that for lunch, because arepas is my cultural food from my upbringing. My father is from Colombia. And so our family, we love to eat arepas and tamales and various types of, and ajiaco and various other types of Latin food for the holidays. That was always really nice. My mom is from Tennessee, and my mom used to love to make, on New Year's Eve, she would make black-eyed peas with ham hocks. That was like her thing. That was her dish for the whole year, because Mom was not a cook at all, but that was her dish for the whole year, was black-eyed peas with ham hocks. So we have, many of us have these kinds of associations, and we should be careful not to believe that that in some way separates us from other people. right? That kind of association, that kind of pleasant feeling about a food, or that kind of way of identifying groups of people according to their food is really very arbitrary in a sense, right? It is very much a construct of the way the human beings relate to one another. But that can also be used as a way to separate ourselves from other people. So we should be careful not to allow that, right, to become this kind of tribal way of thinking about the world, right? This is my tribe, and my people are distinct from that tribe and those people. So food is very important, and food is also important in terms of Buddhism. The Buddha went through a period, the historical Buddha, the first person to discover the path of full awakening, as we understand it in Buddhism, went through a period in his striving where he stopped eating almost completely. He was starving. And he, of course, realized that that was not going to bring an end to dukkha, to the unfulfilling, unsatisfactory nature of life. That was actually just adding more dukkha, more pain, more difficulty, more dissatisfaction. And in a sense, sort of the same reactivity that is addicted to food would be the same sort of reactivity that would leave behind food altogether. You know, it's the other end of the same spectrum. So he realized that no, we need to be able to nourish our bodies well enough to be well, to be healthy, to be able to practice. That's an important part, actually, of being well in mind as well, right? Because the mind and the body depend on one another. So I want to talk a little bit, though, about this kind of broader question of what is it that we are nourishing? What is it that we're nourishing when we eat and when we do all kinds of other things in our lives? And for that, I brought, as usual, a sutta or so. I'm sorry that I don't know the sutta reference of the Buddha saying, when you eat, you should share. I tried to look it up this morning, but I didn't find it immediately. So I'll mention it next week if I find it. But for now, I'm going to look at connected discourse from the chapter on the factors of awakening, the Bojjhanga Samyutta, which is chapter 46 in the connected discourses, and it's sutta number 2 in that chapter. So Samyutta Nikaya 46.2 for folks, geeky folks who like to look these things up. And it's a sutta in which the Buddha starts out by saying, I should say, at Savatthi. So one of the things that I think is really important to remember is that, as it's told, the suttas were recited by Venerable Ananda. They were recited by the Buddha's attendant, and they begin, "Thus have I heard." And so that's not always written here because it would be on every single one. So sometimes Bhikkhu Bodhi would leave that off the beginning. But then also he would remind himself of a particular teaching by remembering who was there, where were they, and who was there. So the Buddha was at Savatthi. And these are actual real places in northern India that you can go visit. And I hope that you get the opportunity to do that. I'm hoping to do that myself next year. So at Savatthi, the Buddha said, "Mendicants, just as this body, sustained by nutriment or sustained by nutrition, sustained by food, depends on nutriment and does not exist without nutriment, then so too the 5 hindrances are sustained by nutriment, by nourishment. And then he goes on to talk about the 5 hindrances. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the hindrances, but I just want to say that it's good for us to think about that. Are we actually nourishing the things that are obstructions or the things that get in the way of clarity of mind and peace? So a good example here is he says, discontent is the nourishment for this feeling of dullness or this feeling of laziness. If you think, oh, everything is crap, then it's hard to get motivated, right? It's hard to really put your energy out there. Or he says that the nourishment for ill will, for anger and hostility, resentment, is focusing on the things that are unpleasant, the things that are repulsive to you or that are difficult for you, with carelessness. So very important that what the sutta says is frequent careless attention to certain kinds of phenomena is what leads to the hindrances being more problematic. So we can attend to things with care, and we can attend to things without care, without wisdom, without knowing the proper way to observe them and relate to them, and that becomes problematic. So an example of that was when I first moved into the monastery at San Francisco Zen Center, and I realized that I would wake up every day furious. I would just wake up just so angry. And it wasn't about, the sound of the wake-up bell or what time it was or what I dreamed or, what work I had to do that day or what somebody said to me. It wasn't about any of those things. It was just a kind of habitual state of mind that I was reinforcing unintentionally. So I was carrying around this anger. And I would just wake up the first thing already having that habit of mind established. Yeah. So what I learned was that, thanks to my teacher, Shosan Austin, she said, oh, you maybe could benefit from doing some metta, doing some loving kindness practice, which was brilliant, right? Because I didn't need to get into a struggle with my anger. I didn't need to say, oh, it shouldn't be like that. I didn't need to try to cut it off in some way. None of those things actually work, right? That's just more hostility toward myself. But what works is to establish a different tendency in the mind, to establish that foundation of a mind that is coming from a place of loving kindness instead of a mind that is always coming from that place of anger. So metta has been I think Shosan said that not realizing that that would become really, for me, one of the main practices of my entire life. I still practice metta many times a day, usually first thing in the morning as soon as I can remember, and last thing at night just as I'm falling asleep, but many, many other times during the day, because I really found it to be so, so life-changing. So that's nourishing, right? That's me having really listened to, taken in that beautiful teaching from Shosan and nourishing those wholesome, positive qualities in my heart instead of nourishing the things that make life very painful and bitter. So we have these kinds of choices. So just going on to the enlightenment factor. So this is a choice you can make, right? You can decide that you want to lead your life nourishing the factors, the qualities that lead to awakening. That would be a lovely choice to make, right? Really putting your effort, your choices to good work. So in terms of the enlightenment factors, so there are 7 enlightenment factors, and I just name them briefly, and then we can go through briefly what the nourishments for them are. Some of the nourishments, there are many, but we can go through a few of them. So the 7 factors are sati, mindfulness, Dhammavicaya, which means, so I'm going to give you the Pali word and then the English word. Sati means mindfulness. Dhammavicaya means sort of investigation of Dhamma, of different states, different objects, things. And then we have energy. Virya is in Pali, energy or effort. And piti, joy, a kind of very warm, active style of joy, sensation of joy in body and mind. And then we have passaddhi, we have tranquility, so calming, the other side of the stimulation of joy. You get into the calming factors of tranquility and samadhi, so what I like to call it immersion of the mind or concentration of the mind. And then upekkha, equanimity, which is different from tranquility in that, and we often sometimes can mistake the two, because equanimity is actually saying one's ability to be steady with changing phenomena. So the boat is rocking and we have our sea legs. That's equanimity. Tranquility is lessening the rocking of the boat, right? Is that calming sensation, that stilling of the body and the mind. So those are the 7 factors. So mindfulness, the very first thing, and this sutta is very interesting because folks can get a little bit concerned or annoyed about the sutta, because the Buddha starts out by saying, and making the same metaphor, just as this body is nourished by food, the 7 factors of awakening have their nourishment. They have the factors that nourish them and foster them, keep them alive. So he says the nourishment for the arising of mindfulness, well, there are things that are the basis for the arising of the enlightenment factor of mindfulness. So he doesn't specifically give a particular nourishment here. And then he says, frequently giving careful attention. So as we spoke about again, frequently giving careful attention to the things that are nourishment for mindfulness is what helps mindfulness to arise. So now why would the Buddha not give just, say, a thing or two about which things? Well, for one, because there are many, right? There are many, many things that can nourish our mindfulness. And so if we want to think about, for example, he gave an entire sutta. In fact, the next chapter in this book of the collected discourses is a whole chapter of discourses about the 4 foundations of mindfulness, right? What are the 4 establishments, the 4 big groupings of types of practice that can help you to establish different kinds of mindfulness? So the first of those foundations of mindfulness is mindfulness of body. Yeah? And mindfulness of body sounds pretty easy, right? We live in a body. We are living through this body. We couldn't be anywhere else. And yet, oftentimes you can live completely tuned out from what's happening with your body. You know, sometimes as a survival sometimes as a way of trying to step back from an overwhelm or a trauma or something that's happened in the body, sometimes just because we're busy, sometimes because we don't like the feelings that we have that we find in the body, or the aging that's happening, or the illness that's happening. There are many, many different ways that reasons why we might have developed a habit of not being aware of the body. But we can develop that awareness, and we can find some safety there. Really, we can. So I want to tell you a little story about mindfulness of the body and why it's so important. And some of you have heard this story, and I love to tell it because it's such a win. It's such a wonderful positive. So, and I can tell it in detail because this student actually shared it in the group. All of the things I'm going to say to you, I'm not talking about private conversations. But this person was studying so we had a big cohort of about 60 people who were doing starting a year-long program for lay folks who were attending practice at San Francisco Zen Center. And everybody got put into cohorts of 12 according to their region so that we could meet. So we met once a month with the whole group, and then we would meet our cohorts and so on. So I had this group of 12 people, and there was this woman in the cohort with me there in Berkeley. And we started out with the first homework, and the first homework was to see what foot you put in your pants or your skirt or your kilt or your dress or your shorts or your sarong first thing in the morning. Which foot goes in first, right? Straight mindfulness of body exercise. So that was our first month's homework. The first month goes by. A week or two into the second month, this young woman approaches me, this young woman from my cohort, and she says, I still haven't seen which foot I put in my skirt in the morning. Like, I get into my car every day and go, oh no, I didn't see my getting dressed again this morning, And so we talked a little bit about that. Okay, so what's happening, right? So maybe think about trying to slow down. Maybe think about trying to change up your routine a little bit so that you're a little more aware of what's going on. Maybe also know that you need to be, generally speaking, aware of the moment before the moment you're trying to look at, right? So you need to build some continuity of that awareness. That's helpful also, right? So, but she's a busy mom, she's got a little 3-year-old daughter, and she has work that she goes to, out of the house and so on. And so it's busy in the morning. So she said, okay, I'll give it a try. So a couple of weeks later, she comes to me and she says, I saw that I put my left foot in my skirt first. Usually my left foot is the foot that goes in each morning. She said, but that's not the coolest part. And I said, well, tell me the coolest part. What is that? What is that? And she said, I also noticed that my daughter puts her left foot in her skirt first in the morning. Sweet. What a beautiful story, right? So not only is she becoming more aware of her own body and her own habits of mind and what's going on with her, but she's also then more tuned into her little girl. And even if her little girl puts the other foot in, then mom's there paying attention. Mom is there attending to what's actually happening for her. So maybe there's a tiny bit less friction every single day because of one moment of mindfulness of body. So it has a tremendous impact for us, even just single moments. And I really encourage you to think about it that way, that as you're going through the day, a single moment of mindfulness, it's like, okay, wait, right here, right now, what's happening? So, so we have the nourishment. The nourishment of mindfulness is mindfulness of body. Then there's mindfulness of feeling tone, certain kinds of whether our experience is pleasant or unpleasant in its kind of basis. We have mindfulness of the mind. We have mindfulness of different principles and qualities of the mind. So there's many, many teachings there. We could spend the whole year talking about that. Maybe that's what I'll do. I'll just plow through the Satipatthana for the next year. Then I'll know what all my topics are for Dharma talks. But just to say, many, many practices, you know. Even something as simple as like knowing when you're standing up, knowing when you're putting your foot. I remember giving this assignment to someone. Okay, just notice which foot you walk through the door when you come home. Couldn't do it. It took him months to figure it out. Months. So give yourself a homework of careful attention to the body. And I think you'll find that that really nourishes your ability to be mindful. So then moving on, let's see. Oh, yes. So we have 6 more factors and we're at the end of the time for the talk. So let me just talk very briefly about the other factors, and then we'll have time in the Q&A if folks want to dive more deeply into the other ones. So the second factor is investigation. Investigation, or what Bhikkhu Bodhi translates here as discrimination of states, which is a very kind of literal translation there. And it's good because that is what the second factor is, actually being able to tell, according to the Buddha, the wholesome versus the unwholesome states, or the dark states versus the bright states, or he says blamable and blameless. That's not such a great translation, or more like unskillful or skillful states. And so this is really not, I want to be clear about self-judgment as much as it is about discernment. Just as I said, like I wake up in the morning and suddenly I was able to see, oh, here is this quality of mind, this anger. What does that feel like? Is that a wholesome state? Is that an unwholesome state? Where, right? And then being able to make those clear distinctions about the qualities without getting into a tussle with yourself about it. Right? So that third factor then is energy. And energy is a good one because, you know, people, especially some folks are very, very, you know, gung-ho. Some people are really, they're all about throwing their effort into the Dhamma, and that's a wonderful thing. And that's a wonderful thing. But like the Buddha, it can go to extremes. It can actually become something that is, it needs a little more subtlety. It needs a little bit more nuance. And this sutta is one of the cases in which the Buddha very, very clearly says that he says there are 3 factors that are nourishing energy. One is arousal, or sort of getting things started, this kind of initiating effort. And then there is endeavor, or this kind of persistence, is more steady state. And then there is exertion. There's that like final push to get over the hill, or like the commentary says, 100% effort, complete effort, right? So notice that the Buddha is saying, he's not advocating that we are at 100% all the time. Rather, he's saying that what actually stokes our energy, what actually enables us to have good energy on the path, is being wise about where are we? Is this a moment when I need to, you know, have a more stable, steady, relaxed energy? Is this a moment to back off? Is this a moment to add more? So that the effort the question of effort on the path is one that's very subtle and very nuanced, and that's why it requires this mindfulness and investigation to go first, right? You have to be very aware of what are the circumstances in order to know what's the way to apply your energy skillfully, right? Because otherwise, then what happens is that if there's overdoing of the energy, then what happens is that there's a lot of this kind of ego-driven effort, or this kind of striving that's coming out of a place of like wanting to attain something, right? But what we know about the Dhamma is that the Dhamma, when we talk about attainments, if you've ever noticed what the actual attainments are, the attainments are actually relinquishments. One lets go of delusion. One lets go of greed. One lets go of anger and hatred. Those are the real attainments. Not something, right, that you strove to build. So when you think about effort, you think about ways to be really in harmony with the conditions of the moment and allow it to have a brightness, right, that will help with the clarity. So then we go on to the factor of joy. Oh, joy, an absolutely necessary condition for waking up. If your path feels like it's a slog, then I would say, okay, maybe you need to consider the factors for joy, right? And so, again, he says things that are the factors for joy. Why? Because there are many, right? There are many, many things that can bring us joy in our practice. Yeah. For me, I often tell people that much of my practice, besides metta, also runs on mudita, runs on empathetic joy. I feel joy when you all feel joy. I feel joy when you all are doing good things in your practice. I feel joy when I see you all meditating, right? So think about that as one of many different ways, right, that we can bring joy into our path. Then you have the tranquility. So he says, interestingly here, he makes the distinction between the tranquility of the body and tranquility of the mind. And he talks about frequent, careful attention to that. And so what does that mean? It means also that the way in which there can be a sort of positive influence between one and the other, right? If the body starts to relax, this is why we sit still, or we attempt to sit more or less still in meditation and allow the body to become an anchor for the mind to also become a little bit more still, become a little bit more relaxed. And then sometimes it can have this beautiful sort of positive spiral, right? So then we feel like the mind is here and the mind is able to take care of, attend to the body. And then, oh, nice, great. So then the body will relax a little bit more. Right, this is safe. This is nice. This is so much better than trying to do 5 things at once. Just be here, right, with the body and the body relaxing and the body, that natural stability, right? So as we were looking at with the earth element, really tuning into that natural stability of the body and letting the mind rest on that. Right? You don't need to make it happen. It is already right here. It's already happening. You just need to tune into that. Yeah. And when you do that, and you do that with joy, and you do that with the mindfulness and with the ability to see the different states, then these factors start to come together, and the mind naturally becomes more concentrated. It becomes more focused. It becomes more willing, right? So if you're in this joyful, sort of relaxed, aware, alert state, then the mind is more willing to continue to stay here instead of running off to Tahiti to go get out of whatever it is that you're trying to do, right? It's kind of nice, and it's willing to hang in there with you. So notice also how, again, even these 7 factors are the Buddha's way of talking about how to work with the natural tendencies of mind and body, such that they build up to more clarity and more peace. Yeah? And so again, so what's this last factor? This last factor is the equanimity, right? So having clarified the mind, having found your joy, having found a little bit of ability to see, perceive the different qualities that are going on, then you can have your sea legs, right? You can start to learn how to be present with care with anything that comes up. And this, and I'll stop soon, this is one of the most beautiful, beautiful outcomes of meditation. And you may think that you're sitting there and you're just spinning out, or you're just getting angry, or you're just wasting your time. But I will tell you that just the ability, just teaching yourself that you can sit still and be with anything that is here in this body and mind is a tremendous gift. That's why we keep going. That's why there is no such thing as a wasted meditation. Because you are sitting there training yourself to understand that you can be with whatever is here. And that is freedom. So thank you, everyone. That's what I wanted to share today. I apologize that I didn't leave a lot of time for questions, but maybe we'll revisit this one again next week and just go in a little more detail and have a little more time for questions. Maybe that's a way to approach it. But for now, we have about 5 minutes. Sorry. Yes, Brad, please.
So I just want to say that recently I find myself tripping over certain translations, like words like eradicate, and even as on retreat. And I found myself every time we chanted the the boundless qualities, and we would say, now let us make the boundless qualities shine forth. I started to think, well, how do you make that happen? You know, is it not more? So what I've been doing myself privately, I still chant it the way it's written for, you know, in groups or on retreat. But myself, I just started saying, now let us invite. I think the more sensitive we get to tuning into our own chitta, you know, the defilements and the hindrances, they're all floating around pretty close to the chitta. And you start getting in there trying to slash and burn, that's probably not so healthy for the heart, I don't think. So anyway, that just came up as you were talking, and also the mindfulness of body piece. So.
Yeah, wonderful, Brad. Thanks for the reflection. Yeah, it's true. I think this is one of the reasons why I'm so grateful that we have so many translators, and that we have, you know, the ability to really explore for ourselves. What is it that's meant there? What is it that we are bringing forth. No, not letting the practice become a self-improvement project, but actually allowing it to be a discovery of what's true about everything, this one and everything. Claudia?
Maestra, ahorita que hablaba de la comida era importante relacionar el cuerpo. En estas fechas en México, la comida es importante, no nada más relacionarnos con nosotros mismos, sino con nuestros antepasados que ya no están aquí. Ponemos un altar, les ofrecemos la comida, les ponemos lo que más ellos les gustaba. Y ayer que fui con mi mamá al panteón y limpiamos la tumba de mi abuelo, de mi abuela, de su tía, de su abuelita, de mi mamá, era como yo misma nutrirme y decir que esas personas que en algún momento estuvieron son parte de mí. Yo estoy porque esa gente que ya no está ahora se nutrieron y fueron mis antepasados. No sé, hay una conexión de que ellos, yo estoy aquí porque ellos en algún momento estuvieron y se nutrieron y es esa relación que hay aquí en México y que me gusta tanto, que aunque ya no estén, seguimos teniendo esta relación con ellos y honrando su presencia, lo que nos dejaron y honramos su vida y su presencia. Y yo cuando me muera quizá nadie la honre, pero yo ahora, ayer que estaba ahí en el panteón, decía gracias a algunos parientes que nunca conocí y gracias a ellos ahora estoy aquí y les llevamos su comida y sus flores y sus velas y fue un momento muy hermoso. Y bueno, en México la comida significa mucho, mucho para la familia.
Sí.
Y gracias, maestra.
Gracias por compartir eso, Claudia. Sí. So Claudia was saying that, you know, so she's in Mexico, and she was saying that in Mexico, that food is not only about sharing with the people in our current families and our current friends, but actually also about our ancestors, right? And that there are these beautiful altars and these beautiful ways of offering the food that they liked, her grandmother and her mother's grandmother and her aunt, and even people that she never met, you know, that she is in touch with folks in a way that recognizes, that honors the fact that they lived and that they were there, and their having been there is part of her having been here. So it's a beautiful kind of reflection on interconnectedness, and definitely this has come into Buddhism in various ways as well, you know, the connections with the ancestors and sort of understanding our or perhaps coming with some appreciation and some gratitude for the folks whose compassion and love and decisions, intentions in the world actually were part of the stream of causes and conditions that enable us to be here. So it's a beautiful way she's reflecting that food is important in so many different ways in Mexican culture, and that she really felt that deep sense of connection and appreciation for those folks, even the folks that she didn't know. And yeah, so it's beautiful, and it's definitely an opportunity for deep connection and deep understanding again of interconnection, and how much we have to be grateful for, really, even grateful for people that we never knew. So with that, we have gone over our time, and I just want to dedicate the merits of our practice today, dedicate the beneficial karmic momentum and karmic results to all beings, known and unknown, seen and unseen, all beings in all the realms, May we and all beings be free from mental suffering. May we be free from physical suffering. May we realize absolute peace and wisdom in our own lives and share that with everyone. Share all the wonderful blessings that we have in our lives with everyone. By the power of the Buddhas, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and each one's efforts, may all beings be liberated. All right, friends, have a beautiful rest of your day. So wonderful to see you.